The format of today's video is going to be a little bit different because of the amount of time I've had with the new Honda HR-V. This is Honda's latest subcompact crossover vehicle for the United States. The HR-V slots in right below the Honda CR-V and is also competing with the likes of the Chevy Trax, in some ways the Buick Encore, definitely the Jeep Renegade. To that you could also add the Kia Soul and a number of other compact hatchbacks as well. Up front we get a slight variation of Honda's basic grille. This is a little bit different than the Honda CR-V. We get a little bit less chrome up front. And overall, this looks a little bit more interesting, a little bit more attractive than the somewhat boring Chevy Trax. The biggest thing you'll notice about the HR-V is its size. It's almost a foot shorter than the Honda CR-V. That really makes sense because this again is based on the Honda Fit. You can think of this as a slightly taller Honda Fit, slightly nicer on the inside as well. Honda was going for a more coupe-like shape, and so they have hidden the handles right back there in the blacked out portion of the greenhouse. We also have a greenhouse that dips a little bit more towards the rear than you'll find in something like the CR-V. Out back, we have a rear end that's a little bit less stylized than the Jeep Renegade, a little bit more exciting than Chevy's Trax. It actually reminds me a lot of the latest crop of Acura products, especially this tail light design right here. It reminds me a lot of the MDX and the RDX. Even though this rear hatch looks like it rakes forward quite a bit, on the inside it's a lot squarer than you'd think. It really maximizes the cargo space inside. Even though the HR-V is closely related to the Honda Fit, it doesn't share engines with the Honda Fit. It actually shares with the Honda Civic, so we get the same 1.8-liter four-cylinder engine under the hood essentially as you get in the Honda Civic. Essentially the same transmission as well, although this one has been modified to allow it to have the optional all-wheel drive system. Now, all-wheel drive is only available with the CVT. You can still get a 6-speed manual in this vehicle, which is relatively unique. However, that cannot be had with the all-wheel drive system, so that's front-wheel drive only in the manual transmission model. Fuel economy numbers are still estimates, but they are very high for this segment. They're really not that much lower than the Honda Fit either. Although my seat time was limited, front seat comfort proved very good for this segment with more thigh and lumbar support than most. We also have a tilt telescopic steering column with a large range of motion. You should know that unlike some of the competition, power seats are not available in any trim. The rear seats proved comfortable for adults, and at 6 feet tall I had 2 inches of legroom left sitting right behind myself. Thanks to the upright stance, headroom is excellent in the rear seats, even though the seat bottom cushions aren't slammed to the ground. Those seat bottom cushions move in the same way as the Honda Fit. Honda calls this a magic seat. It allows you to stuff cargo in the footwell area. You'll notice that footwell area is longer and larger than most because the rear seats don't sit directly on the ground. In addition to that seat bottom cushion folding up, the seat back folds flat with the rear cargo area. The front seat does not fold flat the same way you'll find in the Buick Encore or Chevy Trax, but Honda has exaggerated the recline functionality so you can put longer cargo into the car. Just be careful with your seat fabric because your cargo will have to sit on top of the upholstered portion of that seat. Taking a quick spin around our leather-equipped interior model, the one thing you'll notice is that we get pleather, and that is stitched pleather right over here on the driver's and passenger doors. Now if you got the base model with the fabric interior, you don't get hard plastic like you'll find in some of the vehicles out there. You actually get a soft fabric door panel and a soft touch armrest. You will find harder plastics, of course, down lower on the door. Moving over to the passenger side, we have a soft touch injection molded front, which is also a little unique in this segment. You'll find hard touch plastics higher above, but they're textured very nicely, so it's a little bit different than many of the entries in this segment. If we go lower than that, you will find a very large glove compartment. Moving over to the dashboard, we find the same touchscreen radio we find in the current generation Honda Civic. We have touch buttons that are contextual right over here on this side, then a large touchscreen in here. The nice thing about this particular system, which is optional in the HR-V, is that we do have the option of a smartphone linked navigation option. So we click right over here to the Honda Link Connect app, and you can run the navigation off of a connected iPhone. This display also gives you the Honda Lane Watch system and backup camera displays. Below that screen, we have a single zone automatic climate control, and since we're in the automatic transmission model, we do have a standard shifter right there with a sport mode at the back. We also have sport paddles on the steering column on our particular model. One nice touch in the center console is that this is a soft touch plastic, so when you're resting your leg against the edge of the center console, it's going to hurt a little bit less. Electric parking brake and a brake hold feature, which is very unique in this particular segment. The brake hold feature is especially handy in the manual transmission model of the HR-V. Moving behind that, we have an interesting cup holder arrangement. You'll notice if we look inside that it's very deep, so we can flip these two sides up. We get an extraordinarily deep cup holder for those big takeout sodas. You can flip down the divider right like that. You can also slide the armrest in front of one cup holder to give you a slightly larger armrest reach. Slid all the way back, we can open it up to reveal a very small storage cubby right there. In kind of a Volvo-esque twist, we have a storage compartment right here under/behind the center console. That is where you will find the auxiliary inputs. We have 2 USB inputs and an HDMI input on our particular model. Over on the driver's side, we have 2 analog dials, and then if we look over here on the right, We do have our trip computer in a display that's very similar to the Honda Fit. The white ring that you see around the speedometer actually changes colors depending on how economically you're driving. If you're driving in an economic fashion, it will actually turn green, and if you're not driving economically, or if you're parked, it will turn white. Moving out to the steering wheel, it is a 3-spoke design, sort of a mesh right there on the bottom spoke. We have our cruise control buttons on the right, and the rest of our buttons over there on the left. You will find dedicated voice command buttons, phone hang-up and pickup buttons down there below. The HR-V weighs between 2,600 and 2,800 pounds, which is lighter than a Honda Civic. Since the HR-V and the Civic share the same engine and the same transmission, I actually expect it to run to 60 a hair faster than the Honda sedan. I didn't have an opportunity to acceleration test the HR-V, but I hope to have one for a week soon and run it through my usual battery of tests. Although the curb weight is light, the HR-V is less aerodynamic than the Civic, and that's the main reason that the fuel economy is 2 mpg lower on the EPA's combined cycle. Depending on how you drive your car, you may find that the two models will be either closer or further apart. I suspect real-world city fuel economy to be slightly better than the Civic because of the light curb weight, but I also expect real-world highway fuel economy to be a little bit lower because it's less aerodynamic. The HR-V's ride isn't as polished as the Encore or the Renegade, but that's largely because the Buick and the Jeep are much heavier. In fact, the baby Jeep can weigh up to 3,500 pounds, which is a huge difference. Compared to Honda's own Fit, the added weight the HR-V carries around actually helps it ride a little bit more smoothly. Handling proved to be excellent, easily superior to the Renegade, the Trax, and the base versions of the Soul that I was able to drive back-to-back with the HR-V today, and you can thank the modified Honda Fit suspension for that. Now, this doesn't feel as connected to the road as the last generation Honda Fit, but neither does the current generation Honda Fit. The HR-V's continuously variable transmission is related to the CVT found in the Honda Accord. That transmission is quite different in feel to the Subaru and Nissan CVTs out there because the Honda unit is designed to change ratios much more rapidly, making it feel more like a traditional downshift. Of course, the manual transmission is easily the most fun since you don't get any reduction in power. The shifts are short, the clutch pedal is linear, and the pedal effort is moderate with good feedback. The only downside is that you can't combine the manual transmission and the all-wheel drive system. Cabin noise isn't as controlled as the Renegade or the Encore, but it's on par with the Trax and base versions of the Kia Soul. One of the nice features about the HR-V is that even in the manual transmission version in base form, you still get the auto brake hold feature that you don't normally find on vehicles at this price. In fact, you normally only find that in vehicles costing $60,000, $70,000 or more. It's especially handy in the manual transmission version because in addition to holding you at stoplights, you don't have to have your foot on the brake pedal like you get in the regular CVT version. It will also help you with hill climbing and hill holding, and it will hold the brake as long as is required, unlike most hill hold assist systems that you find in manual transmission vehicles these days, which do disengage after a short while. Be sure and come back for the complete review on the HR-V when I get my hands on one for a complete week. That should be coming up in the next few months. Now, pricing hasn't been officially announced yet for the Honda HR-V. However, I do expect it to start right around the $18,000 mark. All Honda has said officially is that it will start under $20,000 and stop right around $25,000. My personal expectation is that we should see this start in the $18,000 to $19,000 area, and we should see it end around $25,000 to $26,000, which is right where the CR-V starts. Competition for the HR-V comes in many forms, from Honda's own Fit hatchback to Honda's own Civic sedan. You could also include things like the Kia Soul, the Jeep Renegade, and the Chevy Trax. This is a segment that is growing, so we're seeing a larger number of vehicles in this compact crossover segment. Now, some comparisons are easy. Honda's HR-V is available with all-wheel drive. Kia's Soul is not at this time. Kia's Soul also starts a little bit less than this, and at the top end they prioritize creature comforts over the all-wheel drive system. If and when Kia does add all-wheel drive to the Soul, I expect it to add about $1,500 to $2,000 to the top end price of that vehicle, meaning that it will actually stop higher than the HR-V. The interior of the HR-V is a significant step above Chevy's Trax. The Trax and the Encore logically compete with this. I think the Encore has a slightly nicer interior in some forms, and the Chevy Trax definitely has a lower rent interior. Now, pricing on the Chevy Trax is very attractive, and there are some significant discounts, so you're likely to find the Trax less than the HR-V. When it comes to the fun factor, the ability to get a manual transmission in the HR-V is really interesting. But more than that, Honda actually allows you to have the combination of the manual transmission and the touchscreen infotainment system with the smartphone integrated navigation. You can't get embedded navigation, we're told, with that manual transmission, but you can do it if you have an attached smartphone, and that really is unique in this segment. The Renegade is the smallest and cheapest capable Jeep available in the United States. And I say capable because it really does have a four-wheel drive system that is very different than this vehicle. You can get it with an available locking rear differential, an available locking center coupling, and a low-range gear set. While not all Renegade models come like that, all Renegade models do have approach, departure, and breakover angles and ground clearance that is certainly higher than the HRV. So even in the regular format, that vehicle is designed more towards the off-road or soft-road customer. This is more towards the on-road or soft-road customer. If you live down a gravel road or a dirt road, the HRV will be just fine. If you are worried about snow and the snowpocalypse of 2015, the HRV will be just fine. The Renegade, however, is really designed for light or moderate off-roading. It's just about as capable off-road as the Jeep Cherokee. Depending on how the final pricing works out, I suspect that the HRV will be a decent upgrade over the Honda Fit. The interior is definitely a notch higher in this vehicle. It actually surprised me because I find this interior more pleasing to the eye and to the hand to touch than Honda's own Civic, with which it logically also competes inside the Honda family. Like the Fit, we get those magic seats in the back that can be folded and contorted in different ways that makes it a little bit more practical in some ways than Honda's own CR-V, which is bigger. We also get a fairly large cargo compartment right back here, which is surprising since this is about a foot smaller than the CR-V. In fact, cargo area is really where this vehicle shines because we get considerably more cargo room back here than you'll find in a Kia Soul. It's hard to say until I've had an HRV for a complete week to give it my usual thorough review, but I suspect the HRV is going to be one of my favorite vehicles in this compact crossover segment. Obviously, if you want something that's rugged and off-road capable, you're going to have to buy the Jeep Renegade. But that off-road capable Renegade will cost you a little bit more than the HRV. This vehicle is more tuned towards on-road comfort and practical cargo carrying convenience. The interior of the HRV is probably the nicest in this mass market segment, and it definitely competes with the likes of the Buick Encore in terms of interior refinement. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Go ahead and comment down there in the comment section down below. Let me know what you liked and didn't like about the HRV. You can also post comments or questions down there that you want me to answer in the full and upcoming review on this model. You can expect that in about a month or two. In the meantime, you can also find me over at facebook.com/AlexNautos, over at Twitter as AlexNautos, and you can always email your questions to alex@alexnautos.com. I'll see you next week.